Hello. Today I thought that we could talk about death, a light subject. And I think that death is such a powerful subject to really sit down and look at. It feels like most of our lives we are avoiding the idea of death. And as a consequence, we avoid life as well. It's said that one can only truly know life by truly knowing death. And so I'll invite you to take a few moments to sit down with death today with me and look at this happening of life or non-life, however you want to look at it. Because I think that when we can be at peace with death, that peace overflows into life. So what do we mean by death, first of all? Very simple, just the idea that you and everyone you know and love will one day cease to exist in this reality. That everything we build will be for nothing, will turn to dust. And it can be quite a terrifying idea. Eternal darkness, eternal silence, if that is what is on the other side. And I think that the reason it's so terrifying, it's because it is the only certainty that we have. So if we look at our lives, there's a degree of uncertainty with everything that could happen potentially. But the one thing that we know for sure will happen is death. It's funny to think about how feared it is, because it's the only thing we know for sure that will happen. And so we hear a lot of times that humans fear uncertainty. Perhaps what they do fear is absolute certainty. To know that everything we attempt to create here on this existence fades away. And be okay holding that idea in your mind for a while. There's a certain agitation that may arise. To me, that agitation is our resistance to surrender. I feel like if we cannot sit with this idea that our existence is temporary, then we clinch up. We become tense throughout life as a mode of being in life. And it affects our clarity. It affects our ability to see things clearly. So I think that looking at death can be a tremendous form of liberation here in life. That's what I'm interested in. How can we use death to enhance life? How can we use the certainty of death to surrender even further into the waters of life? It has a great power to shift our perspective on our troubles, on our suffering. If you've ever lost a family member or a dear friend, and you've been around that environment of death, of loss, it touches people very deeply. And for a few moments, they become very self-aware. They realize, oh, actually, we do die. It's just a pit stop here on this planet. It brings awareness to their own mortality. And so I think that we can visit the idea of death daily, and not just when it calls upon us through the loss of a loved one or through the loss of a friend. We can visit this idea daily to think, okay, where am I putting my energy? What am I worrying about? Is this issue that I've been worrying about for so long actually that important? Will this matter in 100 years? Will it matter even in 5 years when you're still here, hopefully? Because we don't know when we will pass. Our physical form will die. We have this idea in our mind, this standard story of the human life, that we'll die somewhere in our 80s, 90s or more. But not everyone is granted that much time. Death can knock on our door unexpectedly. And so in truth, look at death as a great mercy, truly. Because even the happening of death is merciful towards our human suffering. What would be the alternative? Not to die? Can you imagine that? Going on forever? Your neuroses infinitely building, old memories fading or perhaps accumulating. What a mess. Now that sounds like hell to me. That would take out all meaning from life. And that's why we have this duality, the event and the non-event, the light and the darkness, existence and non-existence. Now there are many esoteric, very creative takes on what happens when we die. And it's interesting to read about them. You can look towards Buddhism and Hinduism to see some of these stories and some of these predictions about what happens. Or to the West, to the materialistic approach perhaps, where nothing happens after you die. Just eternal sleep. Now I'm very comfortable saying that I don't know. I think that's the correct approach to have. We don't know what happens when we die. Either there's eternal rest, which is fantastic, or there's something else, which is also fantastic. A new adventure. But you have to ask yourself what would go on, what parts of you would potentially go on after death. If your body decomposes, the brain goes with it, memories, imagination, sense of identity. I can't remember who compared our existence to that of a flame, So a flame comes into existence. It is energy manifesting in a physical form. Heat. And its shape changes. A flame is constantly dancing. It can be larger or smaller. Its color changes. And then after a while it dissolves. But the energy continues in other forms, heat, smoke, back out into the universe. Nothing is created or destroyed, everything transforms, and we are just like that flame. We come into the world, our shape changes. When we were born, we look nothing like that. Our shapes, our colors constantly change, except our life cycle is much longer of that of a flame. And so when our physical manifestation dissolves also, energy returns back into the cosmos. And who knows what shape that takes? I'm not entirely sure. And so our focus shouldn't be so much on what will happen after we die, but how we can use the idea, the knowing that we will die, to enhance our life. This we do know, this is tangible. Our life is what we have, it's what we are. But sometimes we're afraid to live. Fear stops us. We wonder what the purpose of life is. When you speak about death, this theme comes up a lot. What is the purpose, the goal of life? Well, it's very clear to me that there is none. And that is great freedom as well. It's good to think of the reverse of the idea. What if there were a clearly defined purpose, a clearly defined goal for life? How limiting, how constricting would that be? Billions of people being born, all to serve that one purpose, predefined, pre-established, clearly identified. Doesn't sound very great to me. You see, by there not being such a purpose, life becomes a possibility. It becomes open. It becomes fluid, creative, dynamic, for you to make of it whatever you wish. There's great responsibility and great power in that, and it's scary. Nothing is more terrifying than it in fact. But the alternative would be something stale, fixed, rigid. And that just happens to be that. That's not the life we have. That's not the existence we occupy right now. It is a dance, it's music, it's playful. And so we can use this idea of death and of an existence without a rigid purpose to free ourselves from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of the future for our material well-being. It infiltrates all the areas of our life. The job that we want to quit because it kills our soul. The person we want to speak to, demonstrate our affection, but we're too scared. Whatever it may be, all of the things that we want to do, that resonate within us, within our hearts, but we can't actually put into action because we're afraid. Bring death into the equation. remind yourself that you will pass, and you don't know when. And this is an opportunity for us to embody divinity, to embody eternity, this magical energy that we are, this flame that we are, temporarily manifesting in these beautiful forms, only to then fade away back into the great void. Is the idea still unsettling? What's holding you back? What's holding you back from doing that thing that you want to do? From being yourself, from speaking your truth? What if you knew that tomorrow was your last day? I'm sure you've heard the phrase of living each day as if it were your last. Again, another cliche with a substantial amount of wisdom behind its original form, its original message. It doesn't mean that we should go out and satisfy our every physical impulse, to overload on physical pleasure. If that's what you think you would do with your last day on earth, then perhaps you need to look closely at the difference between happiness and bliss and pleasure, because they are different things. So you can live as if every day were your last, but what that means is that you act from a place of clarity, and you hold life in a much lighter manner. Sometimes it can feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, like life is very heavy, like your fist is tense, and that you've been holding your fist like this for years. And you can open it up, you can relax, you can float effortlessly. And still do the same things that you do. You may want to change some of them. You may want to change your routines and how you approach certain situations, but it's an inner movement. It's a vulnerability towards life, a surrendering, a trusting. Not so attached to the outcomes of these things that we want to build, empires, so that our name may live on through our possessions and our achievements. 200 years from now, nobody will know you. Maybe even 100 years. How often do you remember your great-grandparents? How alive are they? And I can assure you that when they were alive, they too worried about the future. The future, which never comes. So think about the timelines that we are considering to be true in our lives. We have that human narrative of say 80, 90 years, 100 years, and we place ourselves somewhere along that narrative. And our thoughts and our actions and our emotions, they're all geared towards this human story. First we go to school, we're learning, preparing for the future, preparing until we're teenagers, and we finish school, always preparing for the next thing. And then perhaps we go to university and we get our first job, entry-level job. Okay, it's not ideal, but it's good for now. And then we're preparing, perhaps we invest in ourselves and we keep growing and we keep building. And one day it's going to happen, one day it'll come, the promised land. How much time of our lives is preparing for the future? Don't be deceived by this trap. Something better is not coming. But it can be created, it can be recognized here, now, today. We truly underestimate our power, our divine nature. We are creators of worlds. You are a creator. You can go out and you can make whatever you want. You can write a book, you can draw, you can paint, you can make music, you can build a house, you can change a community, you can change the world. You can do these things with these tremendous instruments of creation. You can help your neighbor, your family. You can feed someone. We're such sophisticated beings, so powerful. But we fall in this trap of being stuck up here, thinking about the future. Sacrificing the present for the future. It has its utility, but be careful. Because life happens now. Life is happening now. Whenever you're listening to this, this is life. You've chosen to spend these minutes listening to this video, then the video ends, and what will you choose to do? So perhaps instead of looking at this timeline of 80 or 90 years where our whole existence fits into this, try expanding the scope. Try looking at your existence as the speck on cosmic timeline that it is. We're here, and then we're not. And so we're here to play. We are here to play as much as we can in a loving and kind manner. That's perhaps the best use of our time, at least that I can see for now. Love, be kind, extend your compassion, and then play. Try even looking at your life in slots of one day. Because we die every night when we go to bed, if we enter dreamless sleep. It is a death that we experience. We are not there, our consciousness is not there. And then in the morning we wake. We are reborn There's the potential to be reborn every morning and face the day as if it were your entire lifetime. How are you going to spend the day? Can you live every day to the fullest? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. But make it lighter, make it playful, celebrate it. You know what to do. You know what to do. Who those people are that you need to tell them that you love them. Those actions that you need to take. This is all in the back of your mind. But it's locked away under the tension of personhood, of being a limited person within that constricted time frame. If you open this up, then you open up the door to possibility. You can embody the divine. You can play freely. Even with each breath, it can be a death and a rebirth. Inspiration and confidence and wonder within each inhale. And surrender and gratitude with each exhale. You can renew. With each breath, you can renew who you are. And so use death, use the idea of death to fuel your life fully. And I'm not talking about making this into another concept, into fueling a high achieving attitude. That may be its natural manifestation. But freedom tends to manifest as a more subtle energy, as non-attachment to the outcome of what we do. And that's when things begin to flow. You have a project that you want to develop, fantastic. You want to change the world, great, do it. But don't cling on to it. Hold it lightly in your hand. As you hold your entire life, your entire existence, hold it lightly. Thank you so much for spending a few more minutes with me. I'm so grateful. And I will see you next week with another video. Breathe in, inspiration and confidence. Breathe out, surrender and gratitude.